Streaming on YouTube.
So Dan, you tell me when you're ready.
We're ready.
All right, everyone, we're going to call our meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United States
States
of America.
to the republic
Republic
For
For
which
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Amen. One and unborn.
All right, our first set of items, we have the approval of minutes. First, we have the, look for a motion to approve the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
So moved. This is Jill.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima.
All right, so we'll go down as we've been going through all these meetings. All in favor, Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Looking for a motion to approve the March 2nd, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
Jill Lawler, move the motion.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor, we'll start with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Aye.
and Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. And finally, is there a motion to approve the March 20th, 2020 special meeting minutes?
Jill Lawler, move the motion.
Is there a
Rich-
second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor, we'll start with Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
and Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Now have announcements and presentations. So we have a presentation from our town manager and our Parks and Rec director regarding Narragansett Town Beach opening. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tierney and to Mr. Wright. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. As we know, there's some uncertainty on when the beach will open up and the scope of operations. Steve Wright and myself, Steve's done a great job putting a draft proposal together for the operations of the beach for this season. The beach will open. Today, we won't be able to tell you the exact date of that opening, but Steve will discuss some of the scaled back operations in some aspects and ramped up on the other to address COVID-19 as far as cleaning, protection of our staff and of the citizens who use the beach. It's a great plan. We've been working on it regularly. He began to roll it out last week when they did the drive up curbside pickup for the passes. And we got a few compliments about that people see light at the end of the tunnel, that the beach will open, and it was a very responsible way to do it. Thank you, Steve, you and your staff for that. I appreciate it. We all do. And we've been in contact also with DEM and the state health as we continue to make changes along the way. But for now, Steve, would you like to?
Sure. Good evening. So as Jim said, based on COVID-19 restrictions and conditions, the following proposal that we've all been working together as a team is to operate Narragansett Town Beach provides us the ability to modify operations to maximize service and increase and decrease attendance as the summer progresses. Narragansett Town Beach has 350,000 square feet of beach at high tide. Roughly 350 square feet of beach divided by 100 square feet per person is 3,500 beach patrons that's a conservative number. Now that's the number that we want to build up to. It's going to provide us a number to at least as a base. And to give you some perspective, a few years ago, we actually did a per basis number with handheld clickers on a busy weekday. We can do somewhere between 7,000 to 8,000 people on a busy weekday and 10,000 to 12,000 on a busy weekend. So 3,500 people at 100 square feet per person we can handle that that's going to be our base number. We want to be able to build up to that. When we first open, we can start with 500 to 1,000, 1,500. We want to be able to, the most important thing about working with the restrictions is keeping our staff safe and the public that attend, our residents and our taxpayers, safe as we work into this. This is all unknown territory to us, so we're prepared. We've been working on this for weeks, working with Jim and again our team at the beach. So just to give you some other numbers are, we have 846 parking spaces. So if you even put 4 people per vehicle, that still comes out to 3,084 parking patrons for that beach. We're not going to be using, in my proposal and our proposal, we're not going to be using West Lot in the beginning of the summer or for the entirety of the summer, depending how this progresses. So beach staff has been and will be prepared with the proper training, supervision, PPEs, along with being supplied with the proper equipment and disinfectants to provide our residents and taxpayers with a clean, safe, and efficient beach season at very challenging conditions in 2020. Lifeguards will be provided with all PPEs required, along with training for COVID-19 protocols. All lifeguard chairs, we're going to be outfitted with polycarbonate glass dividers so our staff can have 2 people in each chair. And we're also going to be outfitting our first aid room. We're going to try to do some outfitting in our first aid room. And so that's what we're doing right now. But as far as the day-to-day operations, we're going to be grading our beach and grooming our beach every day. That's no change from 2019. We're going to have our rubbish picked up every single day. There's no change from 2019. What we are going to be doing, and this is on the agenda for later on tonight, we're recommending, and I'm going to explain this a little bit later in my presentation, 8:30 to 6, lifeguards will be on duty. And that's no change from 2019. As Jim said earlier, we have our sales office is doing curbside sales, no public access from 9 to 5. We've had a couple of small bumps in the road in the beginning of the week, but it's going very smoothly. There's about a 2 to 3 day delay on that because there's no touch. People are sending in their applications and then they're getting them back, but we're catching up on that. We have staffing inside and again, it's curbside sales. We think it's going very smoothly for a first time out of the gate. Beach senior staff, we hope we're going to be making PA announcements throughout the day regarding beach policies and COVID-19 social distancing. We want to be putting signs like this. I'll read the signs. Please do your part, stay 6 feet apart. We're going to have, please use face coverings in all pavilions, restrooms, concession areas, and walking amongst others, but not when you're in the water and obviously on your blanket amongst your family members. If you're not feeling well, please stay at home. Signs and symptoms of coronavirus include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. So those type of signs we're going to be placing throughout our beach property. Beach also, 8:30 to 5 p.m. each day, South and North Cabana parking lots are open to resident and taxpayers and lessees only displaying season passes, hang tags. We are recommending the West Lot remain employees only for this summer. So what are the changes this year? 8:30 to 5 p.m. each day. We're going to have our 6 emission sites: Seawall, South Lot, South Emission, Dunes Gate, North Pavilion, and Cabana Lot open for business. So why we'd like to be able to continue the 8:30 to 5 and not 7:30 on weekends is because what we're recommending this year is instead of stopping charging at 5 o'clock, which we will do, we'd like to be able to keep our parking lot attendants and security people on from 5 o'clock until 8 o'clock and restrict parking only to residents and taxpayers and people that have Narragansett licenses right up until 8 o'clock. And in that way, at 8 o'clock, our staff will then leave the premises and we will be able to secure those lots from 8:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. Our restrooms will be open from 8:30 until 7 o'clock at night, and they'll be cleaned every 2 hours. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. Showers, picnic tables, and public surfaces will be cleaned and disinfected throughout the day. So we will be on that property with staff by the time we start grooming the beach at 3 o'clock in the morning, right up until 8 o'clock at night. So that's why we're giving it some thought about opening up early because we just can't stretch the hours from 7:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night.
Thank you. Jim, do you have anything to add?
But there were a couple other changes. The transferable passes were reduced from 10 to 5, just to reduce the potential capacity for surging the beach and to give more people, more residents the opportunity to use it. Other than that, that's about it. And again, this is a baseline number, like Steve said, that we're working off, and it's also, it's all subject to change as we learn more information. But the beach will open, and we will announce the date as we get closer to it. Thank you.
All right, great. So in terms of what we have going on, the 2 lots, south and north, for will be residents, taxpayers only. West lot is going to essentially be an employee lot. We're going to limit per square footage the amount of people, but you're also going to, as you go through that, see how things go week by week. So I'll just quickly go down the council if there's any, this is a presentation from them they've been working on for some time. If there's any comments from any of the council members, I start with Mr. Lehman.
No, I'm fine, Matt. I think that people have to understand that both the town manager and Steve Wright and his staff, Steve's been dealing with beaches his whole life. He worked for the state of Rhode Island. So I think the professionalism there is far above what anybody else has in the state. And I like the recommendations. And like I said, they're going day by day right now. So things are changing day by day. And when it gets week by week and month by month, they'll make changes as they see fit. So I'm fine with everything up to this point. And thank you for that presentation, Steve.
Mr. Murray.
Ditto. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Jim and Steve, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I do have a question regarding the logistics of the resident-only parking in the parking lots. So both during the day and also that 5 to 8 p.m. Timeframe. How are we gonna, how are we gonna know if someone's a Narragansett resident?
So good question. So again, typical years, if you think about on a regular season back in 2019, we operated from 8:30 to 5, charging, and at 5 o'clock, our lifeguards stayed open, and they will stay on until 6 o'clock. Our restrooms are open. We kept our restrooms open last year until 7 and 8 o'clock at night. What we're proposing is at 5 o'clock, we stop charging, and what we'll do is we'll keep our parking lot attendants and security in each one of those 3 lots, Cabana lot, North lot, and South lot. And if you are a Narragansett resident, meaning that if you still have you have a hang tag or a season parking pass, so if you have a parking pass, you can continue going to the beach, or if you have a Narragansett driver's license, we will allow you to come into that parking lot after 5 o'clock, because if you're there, you're still staying there, and right up until 8 o'clock at night. And that way, if you're familiar with the beach, we have a whole 500 to 1,000 cars that come into that parking lot or more at 5 o'clock every single, particularly in the heat of the summer. And they're from all over, and they're not just our own residents, taxpayers. So if we didn't do that, it negates everything we're doing between 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock. And it just doesn't make sense, particularly during COVID-19.
Okay, now I get the reasoning. I guess I'm just a little bit concerned about the logistics of proving someone's a Narragansett resident, because you can live in Narragansett and not have a Narragansett address on your driver's license. I think that's fairly common, especially, people that just moved down, people maybe that, haven't changed their address on their license for a few years. So I think that's something that we should address. we don't want people that live in town to not be able to park there. So maybe it's just a small tweak, but that's really my only concern, just that one part of it.
Understandable. Like everything else that we do, there are always things that you come across that you have to kind of tweak as you move along. Just like people attempting to buy passes now that don't have driver's license or just moved in. We try to work with those folks, so I'm sure we can do the same thing.
Okay, and just one more quick thing. Actually, I saw it on the chat, so this is very interactive. How about people that have a second home here, that pay taxes here, but are not, residents, but they do own property in town? Would they be not allowed to park in that lot?
Well, again, if folks, the whole idea about having extension of the beach day are folks that have season passes to begin with, people that have passes that are going to Narragansett Town Beach. So one would think if those people have second homes, they're taxpayers, they would be eligible to buy a pass to begin with. So I would think that they would be able to do that during the normal operation of the beach.
Okay, so having that season pass covers them, and then we just have that small issue with the people that don't have the season pass but are residents. So we'll just figure that out. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Ms.
But-
Law,
I'm sorry, Matt, to the whole council. Additionally, the day passes will still be available to be purchased on the day of the beach open. But those two will be, at some point, they'll be stopped if the beach reaches capacity. And Steve's people will determine that, but they will still be sold the day passes.
And that's a good point, Jim. I didn't mention that in my presentation about day passes. We were back and forth on day passes. Obviously, non-residents can buy day passes, but from our experience, there's a lot of residents and taxpayers in town that have adult children or guests that come into town throughout the summer. They don't buy transferable passes for them. They might buy one day pass for the weekend. So at this point, again, that's why it's very difficult to have these very stringent policies and not be somewhat flexible, because what we learned over the years is that you have to build some flexibility in the management of particularly this beach or any beach. So at least when we start with these numbers and we work with the day passes, we will be able to gauge how we're starting off the season with, particularly under these COVID-19 restrictions.
Ms. Lawler.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Jim and Steve, I have two questions for you. And Steve, first, thanks in advance to you and your staff. This is going to be a challenging year, so you're going to have your hands full, that's for sure. My two questions. Number one, as far as the document that we received, I just want to clarify for everyone. It does read non-transferable passes for non-resident / commercial transferable passes. I just want to make sure everyone's clear that that does not mean that it means that we are not selling non-resident transferable passes. Correct, Steve? So if you live in South Kingstown, you can't buy a transferable pass.
That's correct. Those if you're referring to the $200 transferable passes, those are people that if they come up to the sales office and they're looking for a $75 transferable pass, the first thing we do is we check the rental book. If they're in the rental book, regardless if they're renting for the year or for a season, whether it's for the winter or the summer, if they're in the rental book, they have to purchase $200 transferable passes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that because there was some confusion, because it does look like we're selling to out of town people transferable passes.
We only, if I remember, my memory serves me correct, we only sold 110 last year, so it's not a big chunk of what we do anyways. But they're all for all rental, for all the rentals.
No, understood. But there was a campaign a couple of years ago by some members of the council to be able to have reciprocal rights for our beach, and I just want to make sure that people understand that's not what this is.
No, in fact, no, you're right. In fact, what happened in 2017, in my humble opinion, was the best thing we ever did, because that kept our attendance down to a level which was, again, in my opinion, very manageable, and I think it doesn't solve all the problems, because nothing will ever be perfect, but it solved a lot of our problems where I think. Yes, some of the $75 transferable passes were used for friends in other towns. But it was, I think, the best compromise we've made in years.
No, I agree. My other question for you is, because I was actually the one who requested that we open up an hour earlier at 7:30.
Yes.
I understand where you're coming from. I mean, we have limited staff, but I think with what's going on in the world today, people are going to get here even earlier. It sounds like parking is not going to be available for people who are not residents or who are coming from other parts of the state. I'm really frightened about that 7:30 not being there on the weekends and the holidays.
And I told, so we put that on for discussion, because I totally agree with you. In the best worlds, remember, we put that on before COVID-19, and we were at that time, we were going to be going off duty at 6 o'clock and not staying till 8 o'clock at night with our staff. So can we do it? Yes, we can do it. The lifeguards can do it, but what it does is stretches our day out, where now we're there with our staff, our weekends, so early in the morning, and then until 8 o'clock at night. We can do it. I'm just telling you, it's budget wise and burning our staff out. I'm concerned. I'm just concerned about that. But is it going to happen where we're going to address the problem in the morning, or we're going to address the problem at night? I think the problem at night is just as serious or more serious than it is in the morning. So you can pick your battle. To be honest with you, it really is. And I'm there. I'm there both times of the day.
I know you are. And I think our problem actually increased today with the governor opening up only 2 beaches. So it's going to make Narragansett want to be even more of a site to get there first.
So we work for the town manager and you all. If you want us to do that, we certainly will try. That's not I put that on there because we're professionals, and what we do, we want to be able to do it the right way without jeopardizing our staff and health and safety of our staff also. And that's just, it's a long, long day. I hope you can respect that.
I do. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you both to Mr. Chaney and Mr. Wright for the presentation. And we've got our next item will be the consent agenda, items 1 through 6. Is there anyone who would like to remove an item from the first consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to look for a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 6.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. All right, I'm going to be looking for a motion to approve items 7, 8, and 11 from the second consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, all in favor? Mr.
Richard
Lima,
Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Actually, you didn't ask if anyone wanted to remove any to the regular agenda. So I'd like to remove or move 7 through 11 to the regular agenda, please.
okay, all right, so then, we're withdrawing the motion for the second consent agenda, and so we're gonna read these out individually. So item number 7 is a motion to approve the time and production services for the 2020 Movies on the Beach Summer Series from R. Jason Citrone Production Services in the total amount of $5,850. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, so discussion on this item, Mr. Lima.
I don't, as I've said to before on last time that we had agendas like this, if we're approving these agendas, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. We're playing this day by day, week by week. All we're doing is moving things forward. If they're approved, fine. If we have laws and stipulations that don't warrant us having these events, then we're not going to have them. So again, it's either you approve it now or down the road, if everything eases up, you got to put it back on, reapprove it. And as far as Steve Wright has said, with the dollar amounts that are here, those dollar amounts, Steve has that under control on how he's negotiated it. We're not locked into anything, so it's not costing us any amount of money up front presently. And if I'm wrong, Steve, you can weigh in on that.
All right, Mr. Murray,
Patrick, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm good with this. Let's just, we come up on it. We can't do it, but I feel that I'm optimistic. I think we can pull these summer activities off with no trouble. I'm for it.
Mr. Pugh.
All right, so I wanted to move these to the regular agenda, just to ask a few questions before we just give a blanket approval. So, I think Steve, you'd be the best to answer these questions. Specifically for Movies on the Beach, so that's a contract of $5,850 for those 9 movies. The contract, what kind of guarantees are there in that? Could that be refunded if we don't do the events?
Well, there is no, we haven't signed a contract, so it's per movie, and we do have a sponsor for the entire movie series. So what it would be is, it's my hope that if it's approved, that you approve the sponsorship and the contract production services, then we could go through the summer, and if things get a little bit better, maybe we might have to postpone the first couple of movies, but as the summer progresses and we can work it out where we can do some social distancing on the beach and get some movies done this summer, then it's a per movie basis.
So we pay after each movie's screened, we just pay at that portion?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no upfront layout on that?
No, well, for the production services, we might have to group them based on the fee, but I can group them. This is his total fee for the summer, but I could possibly, we can construct this is do it for a group of 3 or 4. It's very difficult with his services, but the movies we pay for by the movie.
Okay, and then that sponsorship, if the movies didn't go on, they would get that money back as well?
Yes, we would definitely give them the money back.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
I have nothing, thanks.
All right, I think it's important to just note that this would start in early July, but we're doing the approval now, but obviously Steve will revisit with us if he sees any problems. Correct, Steve?
Correct, thank you.
Yeah. All right. All in favor, we'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 8 is a motion to approve the sponsorship agreement with Belmont Marketplace as per attached for the 2020 Movies on the Beach Summer Series.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a
Richard
second?
Lima, second.
All right, discussion. We'll start with Mr. Lima.
It's the same thing, Matt. I mean, we're just trying to move these forward. People got to realize what we're up against here, and it is what it is. So I have no other discussion.
Great, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm good. Mr.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, it's connected to the other item basically, so that's fine.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm fine, thank you.
All right, so we'll go down all in favor. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. So items number 9 and 10 have been withdrawn. When we had put the agenda together, they were still, for lack of a better word, hanging on by a thread, and we had an official word that they were canceled. So, but we have received that word. I'm just going to confirm that with Terry Donovan, our clerk, that she received word from the Lions Club on 9 and 10, correct, Terry?
That is correct. We've received written notification via email.
Right. All right. So items 9 and 10 are withdrawn, which gets us to item 11, a motion to approve the request from the Narragansett Chamber of Commerce to sponsor the 6th annual Calamari Festival. The event is scheduled for Saturday, September 12th, 2020, from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Veterans Memorial Park and Gazebo Park, subject to state and local regulations. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right. Discussion by the council on that. We'll start with Mr. Lima.
Once again, I think we're just moving this forward. If they don't have the Calamari Festival, they won't have it. If they choose to have a smaller venue based on what is allowed at that time, then they have the date. So again, this is just a matter of playing it day by day, week by week, month by month. So I just think we should move these forward.
Mr. Murray,
Agreed.
Mr. Pugh,
Yeah, I understand. So I guess just to confirm, approving this does not give, the town still has the control over whether it ultimately occurs, correct? Like if this is approved and the town decides it's something that can't go forward in September, even though that approval was done, the Chamber of Commerce can't make that ultimate decision. It still has to be controlled by the town.
that's correct.
State and local regulations right at the bottom, so we're covered.
Yeah, well, I'm going to confirm with has that expertise. Is that right, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. And all right, great. So thank you, Steve, for helping us out with that. So I'm going to go down all in favor. We're going to
Richard
start
Lima,
with
aye.
Mr.
Murray,
Murray,
aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Mr. Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 12 is a motion to approve repairs to the Bonnet Shores Causeway to be completed by Narragansett Improvement Company in the amount of $17,325. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a
Richard
second?
Lima, second.
All right, second from Mr. Lima. So for our items, these are now our regular items, everybody, and we've been doing the budget. So just procedurally, what I'm going to do is go down the council in the order we've been going to see if you have anything you want to say on this. Then I'll go to the public, and I'll be asking our moderator if there's anybody from the public who is trying to weigh in on the particular agenda item. Then I'll go back down the council if they want to weigh in after the public is weighed in, and then call the vote. So it's going to be slower than our regular meeting, and just everybody try to be patient. So on this, first, I'll just go down the council if anyone preliminarily has anything to say before we go to the public. Mr. Lima.
I'm all set, Matt.
Okay, Mr. Murray,
Yeah, I'm good with this.
Mr. Pugh,
All set.
Ms. Lawler.
I have nothing. Thank you.
And all right, and then we've got anyone from the public? Is anyone from the public, from our moderator?
Yeah.
Anyone from the public who weighs in, I'm going to ask that they say their name and their address, and we're going to want this to be Narragansett residents tonight. So please, Narragansett residents speaking on these agenda items. All right, Mr. Moderator, who's our first person?
First one is Jennifer Armstrong.
All right, say your name and address for the record, please. Okay, is there a second person? We'll circle.
Just a moment.
My name is Jennifer Armstrong. The address is 49 Montauk Road. It takes a minute for the Zoom to come up and to unmute with the delay. I'm sorry, it wasn't clear earlier whether you were taking comments for all of the agenda items or just the ones that were spoken about to this point.
I was taking, we didn't see any hands raised,
Could
but
you
usually the
clarify that?
consent items, usually the consent items don't have a lot of commentary. So, but I didn't see any hands raised for those. So this is item 12. Do you have anything on item 12?
Oh, no, okay. It wasn't clear when you were explaining before that you said that you were going to go back to the public. No, I have a comment on agenda item number 17. When
Okay,
you
great.
get to it then.
Okay, great. Item number, all right, we have two more people.
Raised hands are gone.
All right, so item 12. Okay, so now we'll just go down the council. So there's really, I don't anticipate anything else. I'm not even going to go down the list because we didn't really have a conversation. So I'm going to call the vote. All in favor, Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Mr. Pugh.
And I'm
Jesse
not
Pugh,
angry.
aye. Jesse Pugh, aye.
Miss Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 13 is a motion to approve the contract with the University of Rhode Island Graduate School of Oceanography for shoreline mapping and analysis for Narragansett Town Beach in the amount of $21,064.
Jill Lawler, make the motion.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, anyone from the council? I'm just going to start with Mr. Lima, preliminary comments.
So just so everybody knows, once again, we're back to the shoreline mapping. This is so that we can have a baseline and continue a baseline of where our beach is. So that in case we ever did have whatever type of storm it would be and we lost shoreline, we would be able to not only know where we started from, but on a year basis of sand replenishment or sand removal, we would also have a determination of a baseline from this time on. So I am definitely in favor of this, and I hope it continues for as long as it needs to continue.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm good with this.
Mr. Pugh?
Yep, I agree. We got their presentation from the School of Oceanography a few months back. It was a great presentation, and yep, I am for this as well.
Miss Lawler.
100% for this one. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the moderator, is anyone from the public?
No one's raised their hand.
All right, so there's been no additional conversation. I'll just go down the list. All in favor, Mr. Lima,
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Miss Lawler,
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 14, a motion to postpone the 2020 Narragansett Beach schedule change to open and charge parking fees and admission fees 1 hour earlier at 7:30 a.m. on weekends and holidays at the town beach from Memorial Day to Labor Day 2020 from Memorial Day to Labor Day 2020 to 2021. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. I think on this one, before I do preliminary comments, I will just go to Steve Wright on this and just to share with us the rationale on this change very briefly, please. Mr. Wright.
So as I said in the presentation, learned about the length of day. We're going to be operating staff to 8 o'clock at night. Whether we can have our staff opening the beach early on weekends. That being said, I put this on for discussion. We can do it. So I have mixed emotions about this because I am concerned about the traffic that would be generated at the beach for that, particularly on weekends. As we all know, weekends is when we generate an awful lot of beach traffic prior to 8:30 in the morning. So I'm really willing to try it. I just want you to understand and realize that it's going to drive up our salary costs, and so it's going to extend. If we do it at 8 o'clock, it's going to extend our wages and our payroll for the beach, particularly during this COVID-19 year. So I'm concerned about the staff wearing our staff down and how long of the summer it's going to be. But we're willing to give it a try. I just wanted to highlight that it is a concern of mine.
Great, and I think you're on the ground at the beach, and my expectation is that you will share with us what this looks like, how it's playing out on the ground, and whether or not it might be wise to go to. We had never gone to the 7:30 time, so it was planned to do that. So we're basically just staying with what we're doing. But I think that if we start to see things that you may want to tweak, you'll bring that up to the town manager and bubble it up to us. So that's what I'm anticipating. And I think it has been evolving, as we all know. So, all right, so I'm going to go, any preliminary comments from the council on this? I'll start with Mr. Lima.
No, I just think that, again, Steve's staff, they got a handle on it. But I think pretty much you're going to see a lot of people that are going to try to get down to Narragansett. They're going to try to get down here early. We have the camera every morning, shoots down that beach, and we are now the destination to go to. And for me, if Steve has to even hire extra staff, I know it's going to dig into the pockets a little bit of the beach enterprise fund, but I think we're going to need a year of trial and error as well. And this is going to be a good trial and error year to find out how the beach operates with mainly just residents and the few non-residents that do attend. We'll get an idea of revenue. We'll get an idea of how many people show up. They do a great job on keeping logs on all that. And this is the experimental year. We don't know, like I said, day to day, week to week, month to month. So I'd like to see him try to make it work. And I hope this council supports him. And I hope the residents of the town support whatever operations are down there. And if people are uncomfortable not for the beach to open, then please don't go. Let's just see how we can get through this and keep everybody happy. So thank you.
Mr. Murray.
What was the question? No, I'm all set. I'm all set with it.
Right in front of you.
Mr. Pugh.
I agree with the decision. I think it's the right call, Steve. I know it's going to be a little bit of a stretch to try to do it this year because it's new. It doesn't seem like this is the year to do this. So I think it's a good call.
Ms. Lawler.
So I appreciate, Steve, you saying that you'd be willing to give it a try. I'm wondering if we might be able to utilize the chief's CSOs. Could we possibly do that? And that would ease up some on Steve. We're going to pay for it no matter what. But maybe that might be an approach. I don't know if Jim Tierney might want to comment on that as well, and Chief Corrigan.
Well, it's the lifeguards that the biggest thing is you cannot charge per Rhode Island state law. We cannot charge and open up without lifeguards on duty, Jill. So, but can
we just have the CSOs there to not allow people to go on the beach? Is my question.
Well, I'm not sure we can get away with that.
Can't do that.
Why not?
Access.
Jim?
Go one more time that you wanted to see if we could still open early and have CSOs at the lot.
No. So I understand Steve's concern about staffing. I really do. And we're not making as much money off the beach either. So we have to take that into consideration. But my concern is because there'll be limited beaches open, that we're going to be a destination. We already are, to be able to have people come even earlier to the beach. So if we're not going to open it up until 8:30, could perhaps we have CSOs be placed at the entrance at the beaches where people are going in and getting in for free early, and just letting them know the beach does not open until 8:30.
We could look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. I wouldn't support that. I mean, if you get up at the crack of dawn and you're down there and you're lucky enough to find a parking space and you get down there early enough.
Is it even legal to completely block access to the beach? I know we do it, we charge people, but they're still getting access. I don't think you can block access in full to getting on the beach, but I don't know that for sure. That's just.
If you're not, I think if you're charging for private beach, you still have to, you allow access. And if there is no,
Lifeguard.
if the beach isn't open, people can walk down there traditionally all the time, walk down to the beach, whether it's open or closed. They have access to it. That's my take on it.
All right. Then having said that, then I'd still like to have Steve try it out. I think that we have an unusual situation here with the COVID issue and with being the destination for the state to come to and all the visitors. We need to constantly keep our residents safe. That should be number one goal.
I don't mind trying it out as long as you realize that we'll give it a go. We'll give it a go and see, and I can report back to you, a month or so into it, and I'll let you know, because that I will track every single day, and I'll give you some numbers so into the beach season.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator if there's anyone from the public.
I have two from the public. Wynn Hames is the first one.
All right, so we'll go to him first. Wynn, if you can say your name and address for the record, please.
Wynn Hames, 30 Wood Avenue, Narragansett. My question, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, my question is about walk-ons. People who live in the neighborhood walk onto the beach. There hasn't been any mention of those this evening that I've heard. Steve, you have that? How are you handling that?
Yes, when we are going to be selling walk-on admission passes, again, we have I'm not sure if you heard, but we are going to, with restrictions with COVID-19, we are going to have restrictions on the beach. So we will take those into consideration with our total number for any given day.
You have to drive.
Steve, that wasn't my question. I live across the street, as you know. I have a beach pass. We walk from our house onto the beach. Now, how is that affected?
Do we have to have a car?
Do we have to have a car?
Okay, everybody, we're going to try to keep this one at a time. And right now, it's please make a comment. Please make a comment on the item. All right, it's going to be very hard in this forum to have a question and answer session. So make a comment regarding what you have a problem with regarding 7:30 a.m. versus 8:30 a.m. start. All right, so if you can weigh in on that issue, and then we're going to move on to the next person.
Okay, well, that was my question. I'll have it answered later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's our next item, Mr. Moderator?
Next person is Joy.
All right, so Joy, could you please state your name and address and answer for the record, and go ahead with your statement, please.
Hi there, I'm Joy Makeda, and I'm at 229 South Pier Road. Thank you for having me. So I understand that the problem with the 7:30 a.m. is that, we're trying to fit more people on the beach. And just one of my comments or suggestions, I guess, was to possibly limit the amount of time that each person spends on the beach. So maybe having, similar to parking spaces, like a 3 to 4 hour window, so that we can fit more people, but so that you don't camp out there for the entire day. And you can do it by means of different colored bracelets, know when people got on there and when their time would come up, or something like that. But that's just a suggestion. But I was thinking, if we're trying to fit more people, that might be a sensible option.
All right, thank you. Who is our next speaker, moderator?
D. Marcel.
All right, D, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Mary Marcial at 20 Narragansett Ave, Unit 1002. I just wanted a clarification on the comment from Joe Lawler. Did the council agree that people will not be able to get on the beach before 8:30 in the morning? The CSOs will be telling them they cannot get on the beach?
No, we haven't voted on this yet.
And if you were to vote yes, would someone with a beach pass still be able to get on the beach prior to 8:30?
That's a great question. We'd have to talk about it.
And I guess I would just like to make a comment that certainly
Would
living
you
across.
like the people, I guess if you can keep this in a statement format, would you like us to go, if you could state, would you like this to be a 7:30 start but then people can come earlier than that? Or do you want it at 8:30 and people can come earlier, or do you want a hard start time? That's what you can help us out with what you would like.
So I would defer to the 7:30 or 8:30 to what works best operationally. But whether it's 7:30 or 8:30, I want to be able to go over and take a walk on the beach in the early morning. I have a beach pass, but I would not want to prevent people from being able to get on the beach before the 7:30 or 8:30 time.
Okay, thank you. And I think you can get on the beach, but there's not going to be parking before that time. But it sounds like that you can walk. Is that
That's
correct,
fine.
Steve?
Yes.
Is that correct, Steve? Steve, is that correct? Am
That
I
is
correct?
absolutely correct. During normal operating hours, people can walk onto the beach. They do it now and did it in 2019. And yes, they do walk onto the beach.
And people walk onto the beach before the start time, correct?
Yeah, that is the big issue, because what happens with the seawall and people that park along there and the spaces in Narragansett Avenue is prior, if we were opening in 2019 at 8:30, the seawall would fill, particularly not in early season, but particularly towards late June and July. People would fill the seawall and then go drop off all family members at the beach, and a lot of people. There would be 500 people on the beach before we even opened up. Not every single weekend, but in the heat of the summer.
All right, thank you. There's a few more speakers. I'm going to ask our moderator to go to the next person. Again, I'm going to ask people to make a statement regarding whether they like which start time that they like. So we're going to go to the next person. Who is that?
Next person is Jim.
Okay, Jim, if you could state your name and address.
They've lowered their hand.
Okay, and do we have anyone else?
We do. And next one is Dr. Alba.
All right, Dr. Alba, if you could state your name and address for us. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace on Narragansett, Rhode Island. I think that's a great idea. Opening up the beach early at 7:30 and charging admission at that time. And I also think it was a good idea that you guys stated having the beach stay open later. But hopefully later, if people are going to be going on, they'll also be charged. If we're going to have the lifeguards there, I don't know if that was considered or discussed, but I would think we're going to be supporting them with lifeguards. Then I think it would be nice also to mitigate the size of the crowds later on during the day. So that might be a consideration, but thank you. And I think that was a great suggestion. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator if there's anyone else.
There is. We have William Gardner.
All right, Mr. Gardner, name and address for the record, please.
40 King Avenue, Narragansett. One of the comments I have on the whole beach thing is I think it would be helpful if we actually reach state law regarding to Narragansett Beach, because the public right-of-ways that had restrictions put on by the state to allow for funding of the beach by the town. The beach was purchased. It was purchased with either federal or funds. So that right away, which is the wide gate, the right of way was restricted for a period of time during the day. And one of the other conditions was that you couldn't deny access to out-of-towners, but you could charge them up to twice the amount of a resident. So I think we keep having these discussions and we keep saying, what's the situation? What's legal? I think we should do some research and actually have the proposals be in the actual situation regarding the right of way. because there's questions on if you stopped and if you violate those covenants that were put on the relaxing of the access with the right of way, it might throw the whole thing into, a situation. So I think it might be helpful, to know actually what with, because the intent of the relaxation of the right of way was not to make it permanent and not to keep people off the beach.
Okay, thank you. Who's the next one that we have for our moderator?
Next one is Carton.
All right, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Elizabeth McCartan, 19 Elm Avenue. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I just wanted to make a comment about the 7:30 a.m. that there's a pretty well attended, although not right now because of all the social distancing and everything, but Alcoholics Anonymous meeting on the beach every day at 7 a.m. And I would just want to make that maybe a protected thing. I'm not sure everybody is a resident, but I don't think that they should get kicked off the beach if they're on the beach. And that was all I had to say.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to go back down the council for any final thoughts on this item. This item would basically maintain the status quo of the 8:30 a.m. start. Mr. Lima.
Yes, I'd like to see the 7:30 tried. I think it's going to be a need for this year. I think you're going to see people coming down here, and I think they're going to try to, again, the residents are not going to be happy if they see 500 people on that beach before 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning, or even more, because of, again, what we're going through. People are going to get out. Not everybody's going to stay home. People are going to buck the system. They want to go to the beach. They want to do things. They've been cooped up, and I know they're waiting to get out there. So I would like for Steve to maybe try to make this work. I know it's going to be difficult, but I'm hoping that him and his staff will bear down and get through this, and we'll be able to have a great beach season for everybody. So that's my take on it.
All right, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm not supporting this. Steve wants to postpone it. I'm with him. There's no reason to put extra burden on the staff. He's got enough balls up in the air handling a crowd that may or may not show up. I think there's going to be a certain demographics that won't even go to the beach this summer because of COVID-19. So, I mean, we just don't know, but I think we should just leave the status quo for now. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, I support the recommendation Steve's recommendation. I think it makes sense. I don't think we want to change too much at once, so I'm a yes on the item.
Great, and then Miss Lawler.
I'm going to stick with, I'd like to see if we could try it at 7:30. And again, it's for me, it's really, we need to keep our town residents as safe as possible. And if we need to have to spend more money on it, then so be it.
All right, and the in terms of that non-transferable pass, that's $200. That's the double amount that is to answer Mr. Gartner's question on that, the double the amount not for a transferable pass versus a resident pass. So I'm going to call the vote on this. We have I'm going to start all in favor or opposed, right? So just state if you're in favor or opposed, and I'm going to start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, oppose.
Mr. Murray.
I'm for it.
It's an aye. Okay. Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Miss Lawler.
Jill Lawler, nay.
All right. Mr. Mannix, aye. Motion approves 3-2. Item number 15 is a motion to approve a 1-year contract extension for general construction services with Abcor Restoration Company Incorporated at the revised bid prices, hourly rates to comply with state prevailing wages under the same conditions and terms as the original bid. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
Mr. Tierney, correct me if I'm wrong, this is an annual contract with AdCor, and it's done on a 1-year renewal basis. Is that correct for various projects?
It is correct. There were 2 bidders and they were also the low bidder.
All right, great. All right, any preliminary comments from the council? Mr. Lima.
I have none.
Mr. Murray.
All set.
Mr. Pugh.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
I'm fine, thanks.
All right, and anyone from the public to our moderator?
Nobody from the public.
All right, great. So I'm just going to call the vote on that then. We're going to go down the line. Mr. All in favor, state whether you're in favor or opposed. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Item 16 is a motion to approve the temporary expansion of licensed premises for establishments with liquor licenses in good standing, subject to state and local regulations.
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. Before I go down the council list, I'm going to turn it over to our town clerk to give us a summary of this particular item. So, Ms. Donovan, if you could give us a.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
The
And Terry, before you go forward, how are we doing? Are you getting everything down? I know this is a challenge. Are you able to do the minutes out there?
Not bad. I know I'll be relying on the recording.
All right, so we're at a B- right now.
Yes,
Maybe a C+. All right.
it's not the same.
We'll try to do better. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, it's all good.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. So Governor Raimondo mentioned in a prior news conference that there would be some expansion allowed for outdoor service for the restaurants. So in anticipation of that, because the Narragansett Town Council sits as the local liquor licensing authority, I wanted to have the chance to put something before you to consider if you wanted to develop any kind of a process for the current liquor license holders that are in good standing, being able to have some involvement in a review process for the possible expansion of their service of alcohol if they do start to serve food outside. So this would be in conjunction with the service of food. We did have a Zoom meeting between the town manager, myself, the chief of police and the fire chief and the fire marshal to consider any concerns that they would have with this process. We did develop that we would definitely need to see a sketch of the area and a narrative about exactly what their intentions were as far as outside service, the number of tables, of course, in compliance with anything else that would regulate that outdoor service. But for the applicants to have an opportunity to be reviewed. So with the online licensing process that we have in place, that all of our current liquor license holders participate in, it would merely be them logging in and uploading a new diagram, a narrative about what their intention is, and it would automatically filter through our review process through the various departments so that everybody would be eyes on before anything was approved. So I just wanted to put this before you as a possibility, since you are the liquor licensing authority, to let you have the mechanism in place if the council wants to approve outdoor liquor service in conjunction with the, it sounds like, probable expansion of food service. We have something, but it's up to the council about whether or not you want to move forward with that process.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go down the council members for preliminary commentary, preliminary comments on this. And so we'll start with Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, I don't have any comments. I'm fine with the way they're going to go about this.
All right, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, really happy to see this on the agenda. I just wanted to thank Terry, the town clerk, for putting this together. I know she put a lot of time into it. She's just so knowledgeable in the different rules and regulations, permitting and licensing in town. So I think this is a good option. Obviously, the businesses need as much help as possible, and this is a good way to go about it, a good legal way to go about it. So the only question I would have for Terry is, do we have any idea in terms of timeline for how long something like this would take once a business applies?
This would be really quick. So as I said, all of these license holders already have their logons established with us. We could certainly send out a notification by email to all of our license holders, just in case they're not watching tonight, to let them know that this possibility was available to them and what they would need to do to comply. They upload their information, it automatically triggers the review process through the various departments. If any inspection is required, either through the building or the fire marshal's office, the conversations that we've had is that that is pretty much a 24-hour turnaround time. So depending on, you know, if everyone applies for this at the same time, you know, there would be a process there, but everybody was interested in being able to be immediately responsive and schedule something right away. And as far as, you know, through the licensing process, we know that there would be no additional fee involved at all. There's, I don't know about the inspection side of it, but certainly as far as just applying for the expanded area, the state law allows for seasonal temporary expansion of the licensed premises without advertisement and without notification to the abutters. So there was something of this already in place through the state law. So this is just a matter of, you know, having the council approval and then triggering the inspection process, but no additional fees involved for our license holders.
Great. All right. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Miss Lawler.
Again, Terry, thank you so much. It's a really easy process you've outlined for these businesses that are so frustrated right now with the economic environment they're dealing with. So I think this is great. We're doing this and I appreciate you making it easy for them to do.
All right, I'm going to ask our moderator if there's anybody from the public.
One from the public, Win Hames.
All right, so we'll state your name and address, please, for the record.
He hasn't unmuted himself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you're talking mostly about liquor establishments, but the non-liquor establishments, they'll be doing this as well, and they have the same rules to follow.
I don't think we can expand liquor licenses beyond, like, if you already have
No,
one.
no,
we
no.
can-
No,
Right.
no, no. The same rules that liquor license establishments follow, non-liquor establishments will follow as well. I mean, as far as the expansion and everything. You're
Can I
talking.
respond to that?
Go ahead.
Yes, yes. If an ice cream shop wants to expand, sure, they can expand in the parking lot.
That's fine.
The difference with liquor licenses is when they are granted, the premises is very specifically defined. So licensed premises, when it comes to liquor licenses, has a completely different definition. So when we issue licenses to just general food establishments or retail establishments, it's not as restrictive as liquor licenses are. Liquor licenses are very site specific. If there's service allowed on an outdoor patio or anything like that, that is part of the approval process. So this, what we're looking to institute here is something that would relax those regulations that are so site specific to, you know, within this dining room or at
Right.
as many seats at this bar. So this just pertains to liquor licenses. Those other types of licenses don't have that restriction on it in the first place.
Okay, so that's fine. They don't have to come to you for anything special. They can just expand.
That is correct, certainly in terms of the licensing process. In terms of anything else to do with building or zoning or fire codes, that's not
That's
the
different. Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you.
Fine, nobody's gonna care, nobody's gonna care.
All right, is there anyone else from the public?
That's it, Matt.
Thank you. All right, so any final comments from anyone? Mr. Lima,
Nope, I'm all set, Matt.
Mr. Murray,
All set.
Mr. Pugh,
I'm good.
Ms. Lawler.
All set, thank you.
All right, and then I'll call the vote. All in favor. I'm going to go down the list.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mr. Pugh,
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Ms. Lawler,
Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. The next item is item 17, a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the Narragansett Police Department and other Narragansett law enforcement entities to not enforce the state of Rhode Island's coronavirus-related executive orders. Is there a motion?
Jill Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, so this item came from me, so I want to start with, as with all the issues that come before us, I just want to say some false statements regarding this issue and knee-jerk reactions to the resolution I am proposing tonight have been out and about. So I think it's first of all just important for me to read the resolution to start things off. So this is the actual resolution that I proposed. It's a resolution directing the Narragansett Police Department and other Narragansett law enforcement entities to not enforce the state of Rhode Island's coronavirus-related executive orders. Whereas the threat of the spread of the coronavirus led the state of Rhode Island to issue a series of executive orders restricting the activities of Rhode Islanders and visitors to Rhode Island since March of 2020. And whereas Executive Orders 2014 and 2023, which imposed stay-at-home orders on Rhode Islanders and visitors to Rhode Island, expired at midnight on Friday, May 8th, 2020. And whereas phase one of the plan to reopen the Rhode Island economy includes many cumbersome restrictions on places of worship, restaurants, retail establishments, and other small businesses. And whereas the town of Narragansett recognizes the threat of the coronavirus to the physical well-being of its residents. And whereas the town of Narragansett also recognizes that the restrictions imposed by many of these coronavirus-related executive orders have imposed substantial harm to the emotional, spiritual, and financial well-being of its residents. And whereas Memorial Day weekend is typically the unofficial start of the summer season for most Americans, Rhode Islanders, and Narragansett residents, now therefore be it resolved that the Narragansett Town Council, due to the negative impact of these executive orders on the First Amendment right to worship, on the constitutionally recognized right to travel, and on our free enterprise economy, does hereby resolve to direct the Narragansett Police Department and other Narragansett law enforcement entities to exercise their discretion and not issue fines or violations based on the restrictions imposed on places of worship, restaurants, retail establishments, and other small businesses by the executive orders of the state of Rhode Island issued since the coronavirus pandemic began in March of 2020. So at the start of the pandemic that we have before us, I advised our town residents to be patient and positive. I wrote letters to the editor asking our residents to remain calm and help each other out. We had a lot of unknown factors before us in the virus, and we had people, many individuals who were sorting out these factors to maximize our safety. At the time, the fear of the unknown was strong. As weeks turned into months, I began to hear about and notice other problems arising due to the continued lockdown. I articulated these in the resolution when I stated that these coronavirus-related executive orders have imposed substantial harm to the emotional, spiritual, and financial well-being of Narragansett residents. That harm was the impetus for me to put forward this resolution. In my conversations with residents, members of law enforcement, and medical professionals, I learned that other societal ills, depression, domestic abuse, substance abuse, anxiety have been exacerbated by this lockdown. More patients are seeking medication to combat depression. Cases of domestic violence have increased. Mourners cannot attend funerals for loved ones. The cathartic benefits of a wake for someone who has lost a loved one are gone. Family members cannot be at the bedside of a dying loved one. The emotional toll of not being at a loved one's bedside is that something some people never get over in times of pandemic or non-pandemic. A family member of someone who died in a group home who tested positive for the virus said that his loved one did not die from the virus, but of a broken heart because he could not have visitors. Employees' salaries have been reduced. Others have lost jobs altogether. These emotional, spiritual, and financial harms cannot be ignored, need to at least be discussed, and are just as serious, perhaps even more serious, than the physical threat imposed by the spread of this virus. My motivation for putting this resolution is to ameliorate the heartbreaking situations I just described. It was not motivated by selfishness or recklessness. The resolution asks for the non-imposition of fines and violations by local police at the local level here in Narragansett. It is rooted in the anti-commandeering principle in constitutional law, articulated in cases like New York versus US, and case law dating all the way back to the pre-Civil War era. This principle, which addresses the relationship between federal and state law, states that, quote, Congress may not simply commandeer the legislative processes of the states by directly compelling them to enact and enforce a federal regulatory program, end quote. The principle recognizes that the founding fathers created different levels of accountability at different levels of government. In New York versus US, the principle is stated this way: where a federal interest is sufficiently strong to cause Congress to legislate, it must do so directly. It may not conscript state governments as agents. So while this anti-commandeering principle forbids the federal government from using law enforcement from the 50 states as its agents, the rationale behind the principle extends to the interplay between state government and local governments. Just as the federal government cannot conscript state law enforcement agencies, state government cannot conscript the police force of an individual city or town to enforce executive orders. Our state constitution recognizes this in Article 13. It articulates the home rule principle. It is the intention of this article to grant and confirm to the people of every city and town in this state the right of self-government. That article, home rule article further states that, quote, every city and town shall have the power to enact and amend laws relating to its property, affairs, and government, not inconsistent with this Constitution, and laws enacted by the General Assembly. We have witnessed this constitutional commitment to local control play out in Rhode Island in recent years. On October 23rd, 2017, our neighboring town of South Kingstown, in a 3-2 vote, voted to not enforce laws pertaining to immigration. Cities and towns elsewhere also attempted to create havens or sanctuaries for illegal immigrants. Specifically, the approved ordinance stated that, quote, neither the town nor the South Kingston Police Department shall enter into any agreements to enforce or otherwise voluntarily engage in the enforcement of federal immigration law or to perform federal immigration functions, end quote. Last year, in the western part of the state, many cities and towns passed resolutions citing the Second Amendment to impede or hamper local law enforcement of state laws restricting the right to bear arms. Lawyers and scholars argue over the legality of such ordinances and resolutions, and also about the rationale behind the anti-commandeering principle. But one thing is certain: Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, one of the most thoughtful and fact-based judges who have served on the US Supreme Court, stated it clearly in New York versus US. Quote, the Constitution protects us from our own best interests. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government, precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day, end quote. To those who have reached out to me regarding their safety concerns, this non-enforcement directive does not mean that safety and cleaning measures should be abandoned. To the supermarket worker who expressed concerns to me about disease spread being more likely if this resolution is approved, I say that supermarkets, as private entities, have every right to require customers to wear masks and gloves. I've grocery shopped at Rock's exclusively during the past few weeks, and Rock's has employed best practices for safety and cleanliness recognized statewide and requires customers to wear gloves and masks. At one point, an individual who did not want to wear gloves inside Rock's walked away and said he was going to shop somewhere else. Churches are private entities too. A church pastor can require parishioners and churchgoers to comply with similar precautions as they are entering private property. Over the past few years, we've sometimes forgotten those principles of private property and personal responsibility. I encourage personal responsibility. I trust that our residents and business owners will exercise it. Many opponents of my resolution have made emotional pleas citing health concerns. Yet I have seen I have seen very little grassroots opposition to big box stores remaining open, while small businesses offering what the state deems non-essential are forced to close. The spread of germs in big box stores and the magnitude of people shopping in them pose a much greater risk of disease spread than in small businesses, such as my local grocery store, that limits occupancy to 7 customers at a time. So again, I just want to reiterate the importance of personal responsibility, not state-imposed responsibility here. Continued state restrictions on the right to worship, on mourning at funerals, on mental health, on free enterprise, free entrepreneurship of small businesses pose greater risks to our society than focusing solely on isolating from one another. I sincerely hope that we can instead treat people like adults and not enforce these state-imposed restrictions. So I had hoped to have a conversation here about this issue tonight, but over the last 72 hours, 3 of my colleagues have all indicated on WPRO that they will not be supporting this resolution. So I've always been practical in my 7 years on the council, so I have no desire to waste people's time discussing an item we know is not going to pass. So right now I'm going to be withdrawing item number 17 and we'll be moving on. Item number 18 is a motion to approve a resolution that the town of Narragansett opposes hunting in John H. Chafee National Wildlife Refuge. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Jill Lawler.
All right, discussion. We're going to go out of order because this is an item coming from Mr. Pugh.
Great, thank you. So this is basically in relation to a proposal that's a draft proposal that's been put out by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So they're proposing expanding hunting into some of the various wildlife refuges in Rhode Island. I think there's about 5 or 6 that they're proposing, and Chafee Preserve is one of them. So anyone who lives in Narragansett should be familiar with that area. It kind of snakes through different parts of town, but the biggest area is right along Sprague Bridge, up along the river, and goes up through Middlebridge, and actually even as far up as Riverfront, and may even go a little bit beyond that. There's also a few areas over by the elementary school. There's one area right along the bike path there on Mumford Road. There's a few areas that are really tucked into a residential area down on Wood Ave South Trail, which is a road right across from the Dunes Club. And then there's another area over on Foddering Farm that's borders a residential area as well. As soon as this kind of started making the rounds, there was some activity on social media about it. Some people were concerned because it really was kind of butting right up against their neighborhoods. They're also concerned because they hike and walk down in Chafee Preserve. They boat over there, they kayak, paddleboard, all sorts of recreational activity. And it's not just in the summer. You know, people are doing that into the fall and in the spring as well. The proposal does allow for a few different types of hunting. So archery, shotgun, and muzzleloader. So it is firearms as well as bow. What else can I say about it? Actually, Dan, I do want to pull up the maps. So could you allow me to share my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
I think you have the ability to do it already.
Okay. It says only the host can share in this meeting.
So you have to send it to Dan.
So Dan, I know we did this with the budget meeting.
We did, the settings in this meeting are different. I don't know why. You should be able to do it. I'll make you a co-host, see if that'll work.
Ah, there we go.
There it is.
All right. That work?
Yep.
All right. So everybody can see these maps?
Yeah.
All right, great. So what we're looking at here is you can see the river snaking to the mouth there and into the ocean. The green area are the proposed hunting areas. So you can see, and I don't know, does this zoom in when I zoom in?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see here really how close it gets. It's right off the road there. It's right along the river. It goes all the way to the water line. And it does that all the way up through Middle Bridge, right up to Narrow River Kayaks, both sides of the road, goes right behind Bedford Circle. It's a neighborhood there, keeps going up, goes right along the road actually in Riverfront. So, I mean, there's a house, Patrick, you actually know that house, the on Piping Clover there.
Yep.
Yep. So
Yeah, I know
that would
one
be,
very well.
you would, you could hunt right along the road there in someone's neighborhood with this proposal. And again, I mean, we all know how many boats, kayak, paddleboarders are in the river, even in September for sure. So I don't know if you want to be sitting in a boat with your kid knowing people are hunting there. Then we go down Boston Neck. We can see to the right there, if you're driving south, those parcels there go right up against those Star Drive neighborhoods, right, pretty much right up the corner of those condos there. I know there's a lot of residents living there. And it's interesting, I used to live there on South Trail, which is kind of on the south end here. And there's a little square, kind of a trapezoidal square there at the south end of this these lots. That is right into someone's backyard in that neighborhood. Let me pull out here. It would also allow, it looks like hunting over on the SK side of the river as well, but I'll talk more about Narragansett tonight. So if you look to the left of the map here, you see the Mumford unit. So you can see the school. This is across the street. It goes right along the bike path. So you can have hunters hunting right along that bike path where people are biking. It goes right up to the backyard. A couple new houses there as well. All right. So what I want to do real quick is, sorry if I'm going to give anyone a headache by scrolling too fast, but I got to get to page 12. So this is what it's going to allow. So for deer, you could do archery, muzzleloader, shotgun, September through January. Bird hunting, you have October through January. Geese would be September, and then again in November to January. Turkey would be in the spring, April and May. And then you'd have coyote hunting, red fox, gray fox. So that's what's allowed. So I know there's been some discussion that, you know, it's just going to be archery, it's not going to be firearms, but this authorizes firearm hunting. So that should be pretty clear. Let's see. So I think that's it. So let me get out of here. How do I unshare my screen, Dan?
Should be done when you go over what you're sharing. There should be a button to turn it off.
All right, that's off. All right. So that's it. That's the proposal. I know we've all got some emails. We haven't got the volume of emails we got on the that resolution there, but the emails I've gotten are pretty much all opposed to it. I feel, I empathize with the people that live in these neighborhoods. I do want to stress, just because I kind of skipped over this is not about the right to hunt in general. This has nothing to do with that. I have no issues with that at all. This is about this area specifically, the character of Narragansett, the culture of Narragansett, the summer season, the late summer season. This is not, for what I could tell, what people in Narragansett want. I think it's too residential. It's too open, and it's just not a safe option for us. So this resolution would not be binding. So I should be clear about that. This is a statement by the town to say we oppose this, and it would then get sent off to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, just with same as any letter someone sent. Not a binding thing. It's just saying this isn't something that we want. So that's what I have to say, and I'll let anyone else speak.
All right, so I'm going to go down the council for preliminary comments, then we'll go to the members of the public and then circle back to the council. So we'll start with Mr. Lima.
Okay, so once again, so that people understand, I do live on the southern end of Now River. Just want people to know that the refuge that was established in 1973 was known as Petaquamsket Cove National Wildlife Refuges. And refuges can have hunting or not hunting. This particular refuge, when it was Petaquamsket Cove National Wildlife Refuge, had hunting. In 1999, it was dedicated to John Chafee. In 1988, the debate went back and forth about hunting on the refuge. It's one of the biggest migratory black duck bird spots in Rhode Island. And it does have a lot of wildlife. If in doing the research, if you research this, you would have found out that 4 years ago, you could hunt this refuge. But one note that a lot of people don't understand about hunting, especially in Narragansett, is you are not allowed to discharge a firearm. So there is no firearm hunting in upland areas. The only discharge of a firearm is mean high tide waters along the river. And that's for duck hunting that occurs during the season. So you cannot go behind a neighborhood, take your shotgun, whatever you think, and start shooting animals behind any neighborhood in Narragansett. The other thing that I would like to let people understand is with bow hunting, it's 200 feet from a occupied dwelling. Some areas and some other parts of the country, they've extended that as well. I had talked to Charlie Vandermoor. He's in charge of Fish and Wildlife. And I asked him if the hunting continued, which this particular refuge, when John Chafee was looking into it with Claudine Snyder, he basically stated that fishing, hunting, and boating would continue as long as his name was on the refuge. So the designation would place the site under the supervision of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and would bar development in any part of the area. Hunting, fishing, and canoeing would continue to be permitted. So again, there's been a lot of talk about this wildlife refuge and what is allowed and not allowed. In talking to Charlie Vandermoor and looking over some of the areas, especially in the Narragansett side where the neighborhoods are, yes, we could implement or request that the distance of a bow hunter be more than 200 feet. And I'm sure they're willing to listen to any ideas we have. I am opposed to the fact that you're going to shut down property that has been basically preserved as a refuge to allow hunting, fishing, and boating. I think that we can come up with some rules and regulations that would support the fact that you'd be a far enough distance hunters, especially bow hunters, you don't even really see them, but you can't just hunt along a roadside. Guys just can't go flaring arrows or rifles or guns along roadsides. There are regulations, there are restrictions. Rhode Island has some very tight laws on hunting. So not everybody can get a bow and arrow without having a hunting safety course. So again, it's not like you just go down Walmart, pick up a bow and out you go and start shooting arrows all over the place. There are safety courses. DEM does a great job with making sure that everybody who is licensed goes through safety courses. So once again, Chafee Wildlife Refuge up to 4 years ago was all huntable. All those areas were huntable. In Narragansett, it's bow hunting only, no discharge of firearms. And as you read the state laws that were illustrated on the screen, those are the laws for Rhode Island hunting. Narragansett has its own laws which are enforced, and if the chief wants to speak on this, he can, that no discharge of a firearm is allowed in Narragansett. So again, I think that although people oppose this, I think that sometimes you need to look at the history of this, see what was involved in order to purchase the property, get the funding, continue with public access, continue with hunting, fishing, and boating, and look into how this was all established and what was established when it was turned over from in 1973 to 1999 as John F. Chafee Wildlife Refuge. So I think that if people get together and look at this, I think you'll find that hunting in Narragansett, as far as the bow hunting, there are a lot of properties, especially this wildlife refuge, very overpopulated with deer. The overpopulation of deer is not something that people want. And if you love the animals, I love them too. I do hunt. But if you don't crop the properties and take care of cropping these herds, you will have diseases that will affect these animals. You will have a great population of deer ticks and ticks. And I'm sure some of these neighborhoods go through it. I know quite a few people that have Lyme disease and basically a big deer population in their area. So I am dead against stopping anything from the Chafee Wildlife Refuge as far as hunting goes. I think that if you want to extend some of the boundaries or some of the distances with bow and arrow, I'm sure that Charlie Vandemore would love to listen. He'll hear what you have to say and he'll come up with a proposal. I will say this though, as people would say, they don't like to tell law enforcement what to do. I am also of that. I don't want to tell Narragansett Police what to do. I don't want to tell the fire department what to do. U.S. Fish and Wildlife also has their own enforcement. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is one of the highest enforcements in the country when it comes to preserving and protecting. So they have the answers, they have the information, and I think that if we try to work with them, I think we can come up with a great solution on this property. I think if you try to work against them, that may not be the avenue to go. But I do feel that we can work with them, and I think that we can continue the hunting the way it was set up from its original date. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Murray.
Okay, sorry, Jesse, but I can't support this one. This is no different from gaining access to the ocean down on Pilgrim Avenue or getting down to the Pier Beach early in the day or after hours at night. As Narragansett residents and Rhode Islanders, we have certain riparian rights to our natural resources. So to thin out the deer crowd, the crowding of deer, yeah, Not only do they carry disease and have other issues, you might save the front end of your car. Every now and then, we've had, people hitting them and stuff, and it's a safety issue there. So I can't support this, but I understand Jesse's concerns. But there's not too many bow hunters out there. There's a few, but I don't think there's gonna be a bunch of people. And I thought the law was you cannot discharge a firearm within 200 feet of a dwelling.
500.
It's 500 feet of a dwelling.
Yes, sir.
And then it's even more restrictive in Narragansett. Is that what you're saying?
There's no gun hunting at all in there.
No gun hunting at all. Okay.
At all.
I didn't know that. So.
I need to chime in on that one. So if you read through the documentation, it's pretty specific. So what it says is that state law supersedes town law. So if you have a state park that allows hunting, that would supersede the regulation in the town. It says it right in the proposal. So this is federal land. It's not Narragansett town land. So if this passes and this is established, and you start to hear some gunshots, you can talk to Rick Lima about that. Because it's
Patrick Murray.
And Patrick Murray.
Hey, Sean, let Sean pipe in. Let Sean pipe in on this.
We'll get around to Sean.
We did.
But Patrick, let me just do everybody.
All right, certainly.
And then we can come back around to others. Yeah, so just preliminary comments, Ms. Lawler.
So this does scare me. I'm not as knowledgeable as Rick or Jesse on this subject matter, but I think Rick gives a good solution that we should be sitting down with Fish and Wildlife and talking about it. What is a muzzle loader that they're talking about? What is that?
That's a
black powder.
Ball shot, black powder.
Single shot, black powder.
So if Fish and Wildlife put those terms in, are they then saying that they can be used then? And as we found out recently, state does supersede our town law. It does concern me. I'd like to hear Mark weigh in as well as Sean talk about this. I did receive a bunch of emails having the maps up during Jesse's presentation because this is backing into different neighborhoods. Again, I am not against hunting whatsoever. But I just want to make sure that we're doing something safe here and not entering into something with Fish and Wildlife if we can actually make some change to make it safer for the neighborhoods.
Okay, so what we'll do is I see a couple, I'll go to the moderator, then we'll go back through the council. And if we need to bring in some members of the senior staff on this, then we'll do that. So I'm going to ask our moderator, we're going to do the public portion right now on the hunting on the preserve. I keep saying that it's a refuge. I apologize. So
we have Michael first.
All right, so please state your name and your address for the record, and then go ahead with your statement, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Michael Fodiatis, and I live at 32 Pontiac Road. This whole thing that's going on here is a result of a draft plan put forth by the Fish and Wildlife Service, as we know. And that is due to a law which wasn't mentioned by Mr. Lima, which is the National Wildlife Refuge System Improvement Act of 1977. And in this act, President Clinton actually praised the Congress and the various sportsmen and environmental groups for reaching a difficult compromise on this. The compromise they reached resulted in the House passing this by a vote of 419-1, with only Ron Paul of Texas dissenting, I assume because he thought it expanded federal control. In Rhode Island, both Patrick Kennedy and Robert Wigand approved, signed on to this. The Senate passed this law by unanimous consent. And this was in 1997. This was at a time when John Chafee was the chairman of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. And so John Chafee was, as we all know, a tremendous conservationist, famous for this. We've got his name on our preserve. And to say that he didn't understand what this law meant would be, not very good. Also, John Chafee knew firearms. He was a Marine officer. He fought at Guadalcanal, the Battle of Okinawa, and in the Korean War. And he was one of the few Republicans who favored strict gun control. And in fact, he sponsored a law which would have banned the manufacture, importation, exportation, sale, purchase, transfer, receipt, possession, or transportation of handguns and hand ammunition. It's rather ironic that this vote is against his wishes, because that law specifically states that the Fish and Wildlife Service is to prioritize wildlife-dependent recreation, which it defines as a use of refuge involving hunting, fishing, wildlife observation, photography, or environmental education and interpretation. And it goes on to state that this is a requirement of the National Fish and Wildlife Service to make this available to the citizens. And it's a requirement that it prioritizes these things. In fact, in some sections specifying hunting and fishing specifically over all other activities on the refuge. As far as safety goes, this law does make it the purview of the state. It is instructed to follow state law as best as possible and wherever possible, and in some language even seems to encourage the Fish and Wildlife Service to stay out of any other involvement. It says it is not required to take any other input other than input from the state Fish and Wildlife, the state DEM. In our state of Rhode Island here, DEM has had hunting regulations that enforce limits and have resulted in, as far as I'm aware, no tremendous casualty rate. I can't see any of you having mentioned any hunting accidents, fatalities. The last one I know of was 10 years ago. It was a friend of mine. It was in the middle of a large wildlife management area. These laws have been successful everywhere else. And if you have issue with how safe you think things are going to be, your avenue is the state DEM, not the Fish and Wildlife. They follow the state DEM rules. The map that Councilman Pugh showed is further broken down into individual units where the use of firearms is or is not permitted. When you see those large green areas, don't think anything goes in any of those areas. The plan does get quite more specific and detailed. I agree that firearms will be allowed on this property in Narragansett. This is federal land. This is not Narragansett property, and the federal regulations will apply. However, the federal folks are saying we have to follow state law, which says 500 feet from a residence. This works where state huntable land abuts residential neighborhoods everywhere else in the state. I don't know why 500 feet is shorter in Narragansett than it is anywhere else, or why it's any less safe here than it is anywhere else. The bike path runs right through the middle of the Great Swamp Management Area. We haven't heard about any problems there. So in short, this is what John Chafee wanted for this refuge. He knew where it was. He wanted to make sure the public had hunting and fishing access to it. He gave control of safety to the state and the people local to that area. And a vote for this resolution is a vote against John H. Chafee.
I didn't yet. All right, thank you, sir. Our next speaker, I'm going to go to our moderator, please. And who's the next person on the list?
Next speaker is David and Rosemary Smith.
All right, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, this is Rosemary Smith at Castle Road. And I want to speak tonight on this, the fishing and hunting plan. And while I support the plan for fishing along the narrow river, I am very concerned about opening up the refuge to hunting with crossbows and firearms. The reason being that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife parcels are not contiguous. They are interspersed into residential areas, which create a danger for watershed residents. There is also immediate danger for all those who recreate on and along the river throughout the year. The shoulder seasons have become increasingly busy with residents and visitors who enjoy the beauty of the watershed. There are two specific parcels which cause my additional concern. The Mumford Road hunting unit is adjacent to the William C. O'Neill South County Bypass segment that runs from MacArthur Boulevard in South Kingston to Mumford Road in Narragansett. In 2017, the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning estimated that there are 30,000 trips at Mumford Road each year. Hunting in adjacent woods would discourage bike path use. Also, there is no parking in that area. The closest public place to park is the Narragansett Elementary School and the Narragansett Community Center. Visions of hunters walking up Mumford Road would cause security concerns at these facilities. My second concern is with the Star Drive hunting unit. On the north side, the parcel abuts a neighborhood which is busy all year long. The south side of the unit is located right along the edge of the walking trail on Canachet Farm, which is owned by the town of Narragansett and maintained by the Friends of Canachet Farm. The Canachet Farm Trail is used by numerous individuals throughout the year and in the shoulder season by groups of up to 50 people taking guided environmental walks sponsored by the Friends of Canachet Farm. Hunting immediately to the north of that pathway would present a danger and discourage the use of this open space. Available parking at the South County Museum would mean that hunters would be using the trail. I was really surprised that this plan had come forward and that I'd only heard about it in the last 2 weeks. I want to make a suggestion to the town, and I would ask that the town of Narragansett modify its Notify Me webpage to include notices that it has received from agencies such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, RIDOT, CRMC, Rhode Island DEM, and others that affect Narragansett residents, especially those notices which solicit public comment. In this way, residents have an equal view into the matters that could impact our community. And thank you for letting me have my say tonight. I appreciate it.
Nice to hear from you. Thank you. I'm going to ask our moderator who we have next.
Next, we have Dr. Alba.
All right, Dr. Alba, name and address for the record, please.
Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. First, I'd like to thank Rosemary. I think she did a wonderful job. I think she was right on point, right on target. I'm the former president of Riverfront. I've been was a former president for many years of Riverfront Estates. We heard gunshots in this area. Some people got very anxious about that. I do understand the deer situation. We do have deers. You know, they're just causing problems with all of our greenery over here, evergreen shrubs. They're very costly. And Councilman Lima does have a point. I don't know if there's a way of shooting these deer so that they somehow can basically not reproduce. But in any event, I agree with what Rosemary said, and I hope that the council considers what she said. I think they were valid points. Thank you.
All right, who do we have next from the public?
We have Megan Murray.
All right, please state your name and address for the record. We can't hear you, Ms. Murray.
All right, she's gone. That's
Okay.
it.
All right, great. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to circle back around the council, and we're going to start with Mr. Lima. If there's any addition, I know some people wanted to hear from some of the town staff, but you know, and that's fine. So why don't we, Mr. Lima, do you have any additional comments right now?
Well, I'd like to clarify the hunting with guns in Narragansett. So if the police chief could really step in and put out the ruling, because as far as I know, Narragansett has no gun hunting allowed. No discharge of a firearm allowed on upland areas. As far as the waterfowl that people hear, yes, up to mean high tide along the Narragansett perimeters, there is duck hunting, goose hunting allowed. But if the chief is still here, I'd like him to
Here.
possibly weigh in, chief, if you could. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call on him. If the Chief Corrigan is out there, please, could you?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm present. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. It's true that we do have the ordinance restricting the firearms, but they're also correct that that will not apply to the federal lands, and they do intend to include firearms on that supersedes our local ordinance and following state law.
Okay, so based on that, there's also the refuge that's down off of Point Judith Road. And I know we're talking about the Chafee one, but there's also a refuge down off of Point Judith Road that everybody's aware of to the left-hand side. And that refuge there is only bow hunting. I think that if you find that you do the homework on this with Charlie Vandermoor, you're going to find that the only thing that they're going to allow is bow hunting. That's what Charlie is looking for. They're looking for the bow hunting. Bow hunting in Narragansett, I have no problem with it. Yes, I would have a problem if people were discharging rifles in the back of those neighborhoods. I would not be for it. It's crazy. I'm a hunter. I know what people do. So bow hunting, I am for the bow hunting. And I believe if you sit with Charlie Vandermoor, you will find that he is willing to change any language and be able to put the bow hunting in there. And that's what I would love to see.
I was just going to clarify that he also did mention when we called him and got that information that that's why they're having this period of public comment, so they can get the feedback from the community on this, and then they'll make further decisions.
The other thing that people don't understand is in a lot of these refuges, they have a lottery system where you sign up. So that also means that you have to show your safety cards, license, you're registered, and they only allow so many hunters in on a piece of property. So some of these properties, they may only allow 3-4 hunters. That may be it. But that is also part of what Charlie wants to hear as far as hunting in these refuges. So I leave it at that, and I'll listen to what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Mr. Murray.
No, I'm good. I said my piece. I'm against this.
Mr. Pugh.
So again, are we voting based off some assumptions that we have, or are we voting based off of the actual information that we have? The information states in it that guns will be allowed. We have the police chief who just said guns will be allowed. We have the first speaker who seemed very knowledgeable, said guns will be allowed. So I'm gonna go based off of an assurance from Rick Lima. No, I'm going off the information. That's what we vote on. So for you to publicly tell people, 250 people in this meeting, that there's not going to be guns is irresponsible. You don't know that, and you're saying that. Go off the information so we can vote in an informed manner.
Ms. Lawler.
So as I had said before, I think that we need to sit down with Fish and Wildlife and get some clarification on this. I mean, it does state guns. I'm hearing from the chief and from Rick that that's not what takes place, but I think we just need to make sure that's not what takes place. I would hate to have guns being fired off. I have no problem with the bow and bowing of deer. I wish they could get more deer on my lawn.
All right, so in terms of this issue, we had I saw this notice come up regarding the Fish and Wildlife, regarding the refuge, and then a few things came. We got a few emails about it really quickly coming in. Remember, the Fish and Wildlife is going to go through a process to determine this. I think it's a little early in the process for us to pass a resolution regarding our position on this, because it's been busy. I've been spending a lot of time trying to prepare for these Zoom meetings. So I really haven't had a chance to go in depth on this issue. And I just think it's premature right now to really vote on it. And that's really my general view of it. And that's one of the problems sometimes with these types of resolutions that are where the decision maker is someone else. So the decision maker is going to be Fish and Wildlife. And I think we really have a duty to look at the history and look at what's, what John Chafee's wishes were, what the nature of the refuge is going to be. And I think that, I think we need to, and look at those things before we just knee jerk put on something after a few emails. So I'm going to call the vote on this. I'm going to ask if you are an aye or a nay, or if you favor or oppose. So I'm going to start with Mr. Lima. All in favor? Mr. Lima.
No.
Mr. Murray.
No.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, yes.
Ms. Lawler.
I think we need to look more into this before we move along. I agree with what Matt said. So if we could hold off this one and do some more digging into it and find out more information, I prefer that. So I'm going to abstain from voting.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to be a no. So the motion fails 1-3. Terry, did you get that?
Did, thank you.
Okay. Item 19 is a motion to postpone the public hearing scheduled for Tuesday, May 26th at 7:30 p.m. on the consideration of a variety of text amendments to Chapter 731 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett entitled Zoning, addressing bulk zoning regulations. Is there a motion?
Lawler, so moved.
Is there a second?
Richard Lima, second.
All right, discussion. The reason this is on, and it's very frustrating because we have been wanting very much to get our hands into this. We have the moratorium on building. We're concerned about building heights going up. We're concerned about lot coverage. As a council, we were really going to finally get into this, and unfortunately the pandemic hit. And so we did extend the moratorium when right at the beginning of not right at the beginning, but toward the beginning of the pandemic, which is fortunate because that still is in place. And again, that moratorium, I don't want to speak out of turn, but is basically for buildings with more than 4 bedrooms. And so smaller houses can be built during the moratorium. What has since happened is we still have a 5-person limit for a meeting. This would be a public hearing with a steno, with testimony. And so that's going to be very hard to pull off on the 26th, which is not that far away. Today is only a week away. And we also have an order from the judge basically telling us that we need to, if we're going to address this bulk zoning issue, then we need to have full in-person participation. So that's why it's on. I know it's frustrating. I didn't even put a date certain for a new date on this because I don't even know how far out we should go. I have a couple suggested dates, but what I'm going to do is just if there's if anyone wants to comment on it in any way, I mean, it's a scheduling item. Maybe just look at your calendars and we can see what's out there. Terry, if you can be looking at off dates, because we've been saying we want to do this on an off date. So why don't what I'll do is I'll just see if anyone has comments and then I'll go to Terry. Mr. Lima.
I'm fine, Matt. I think an extended date would be, something that we should look into, and hopefully we can, get the meeting at that point, have public comment.
Yeah. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, I'm all set. Anytime you guys are ready to have a meeting, I'll be there.
Mr. Pugh.
I'm fine with it.
Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, one question though, Matt, where in the judge's order, does it actually state that that there has to be in-person participation?
I don't think it's actually in the order, but it was the description of the order that was sent to us by our attorneys. And they told it, and they had been, I wasn't at that. I think it was a conference, and it sounded like it was in fact maybe said in that conversation. So, but I think a 5-person, if we go to a 10-person limit, there's a shot we could do it. If we go to 25, we had vehicles for figuring that out. But I think, so yes, we could do full in-person participation. I think maybe at 10, 25, we had some vehicles for that. But right now, as things stand, to schedule it with 5, But no, I don't think it was specifically in the order. We can go and double check that. But I remember when they briefed us on this, the judge was pretty emphatic. They told us.
Matt,
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just field that for a moment. First of all, the restraining order is still in place. So there is a hearing scheduled for Wednesday, the 20th, to try to even remove the restraining order preventing us from even from discussing the bulk zoning matters. So at this point, we're not even legally able to do that. So that's number one. I did see some correspondence today that may actually push the May 20th court date off. But the judge was, when we first went before the judge on this matter, Zoom meetings were limited to, in her opinion, at that time, essential matters, and she deemed it not to be an essential and emergency matter. That has since changed, but she was very concerned that this type of forum does not afford people who are concerned about COVID and distracted the opportunity that they might otherwise take advantage of to voice their concerns about such zoning matters. So I'm not sure where that stands at this point. I know she was very strong in her belief that at that time it shouldn't be done by Zoom. But in any event, we can't do it as of this date because we're not certain what's going to happen on the 20th. And if the court hearing on the 20th is postponed, then we have really no idea what date we'll be able to hear that.
All right, great. And again, I'm going to have Terry, I'm going to go to the public. Again, I'm going to remind members of the public, this is really just a scheduling item. So try to limit your comments to that. And again, Terry, if you're looking at dates for us in maybe June and July, that would be great. So I'm going to ask the moderator for the first public comment.
First one is David and Rosemary Smith.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, state your name and address for the record. We can't hear you.
No.
All right, we'll go to the next person. We'll circle back to them. Who do you have next?
Steve.
All right, Steve, please state your name and address for the record. We can't hear you. All right, let's go to the next. We'll go to the next person if there's anyone else, and then we'll circle back to the two that we couldn't hear. They can adjust their microphones. And if there's a missed, can the moderator go to the next person?
I mean, Paul Zonfrillo.
All right, Paul, if you can state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, it's Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. I just want to tell the other people, a little box flashes out to say unmute now, and you've got to hit that blue button or it won't work. So do I understand correctly that the rescheduling issue that we're having is because of the court date, that's the court date that's potentially on the 20th, that until that decision, that's what's really driving all this? Is that, I just wanted a clarification because that's what I got from Mark.
Yeah, two things. It's the limit of 5 people, and then it's the court date. We'll get information on the 20th. So we could leave it open-ended. We could leave the date open-ended if the council wanted to, but I just think it's better for us to pick a date because everybody can hear it in the public setting, but that's up to the council.
Well, I mean, I think Mark has a great point that the Zoom meetings were they were limited to essential business. If we're waiting for the court hearing, that's one thing, right? But if, we don't seem to need to have it in person, right? Maybe that's a preference, and things have really changed a lot since then. So it would seem to behoove us to try and at least talk to the judge and see if we can get it online, because it could be a long time before we have it in person. And I know there's a sense of security that the building, we've got this moratorium right now, and there's a sense of security. There won't be any more monsters, but time is not our friend in all of this. Time is not our friend in these bulk zoning things. So, I would encourage a more aggressive, posture on this rather than waiting for every single thing to be in place. As soon as we have the ability, we should go by what we're able to do, not, oh, it's preferable to have it in person. If we're not required to have it in person, then we shouldn't let that hold us up. So that's all I have to say.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to try, Dan, we had Steve and we had Dave and Rosemary. Either of those still out there?
Steve is still out there.
All right. Steve, please, name and address. All right, we'll wait to see if anyone can get that fixed. All right. And Dave and Rosemary, are they still up?
Still there, but hand just went back up.
Okay.
Yes, this is Rosemary. Can you hear me again?
Yes.
I apologize. I did not realize that I had my raise my hand on. I'm a newbie at it, so I'm learning as I'm going along. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, Steve. Okay, we'll leave that there, see if we can fix that. If we can't, Terry, did you have some dates, some off nights, some Mondays in the next weeks or months?
Yes, the off dates in June would be Monday, June 8th, June 22nd, and June 29th. And in July, it would be July 13th and July 27th.
It's June 29th. What's the feeling on June 29th? That's about a month away. Council members, Ricky?
That works for me. I mean, I think that you're gonna have to give it more than a couple of weeks before things are gonna get lifted to the point where we can have a reasonable meeting.
Patrick?
You're on mute. Muted.
All set, anytime.
All right, Mr. Pugh?
I have no plans for the next 6 months, so any date works for me.
We'll be out of the refuge.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be hunting.
Yeah.
Miss Lawler?
Anytime.
All right. And we had this for 7:30. Does that work for everybody? Would you like an earlier time than that?
Let's do it earlier.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll just say 6:30.
Sounds good.
All right. So Terry, this will be for Monday, June 29th at 6:30 p.m. All right. So I'm going to call the vote on that. Scheduling motion have that level of discussion, but Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima.
All in favor. Mr. Lima.
Richard Lima, aye.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mr. Pugh.
Jesse Pugh, aye.
Miss Lawler.
Bill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix. Aye. Motion approved 5-0. We now move to our period of open forum public comment. If there's anyone who would like to address the council regarding issues facing Narragansett, we'd be glad to hear from you. I'm going to ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes, be as succinct as possible, and we'll go from there. So we're going to start. I'll ask our moderator to go down the list of people who have got their hands raised electronically. Go ahead.
We have Teresa Tanzi.
All right, Representative Tanzi, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Teresa Tanzi. I reside in South Kingstown on Hillcrest Road, but I represent Narragansett and some portions of the area within the Chaffee Preserve where there is a hunting. The proposal for hunting exists. And I apologize, I didn't raise my hand earlier. I was hoping to get to hear what Chief Corrigan had said prior to my making a comment, because I felt that he would have a good understanding of the interplay between state laws, federal lands, and town ordinances. And I appreciate his comments, and they only serve to bolster my opposition to this proposal. I have received over a dozen calls and emails on this issue. I know you've done the vote already, but I felt important that I weigh in on it. It was mentioned that this was too early a time to have this discussion. And this is precisely the time that this discussion needs to be had. This is the time for public comment. So I certainly hope that this will appear back on the agenda soon, and that the counselors will have the opportunity to do their homework and understand the implications of allowing hunting to happen in people's backyards. I think schools and guns don't mix. And just add to that, that hunting season overlaps with the school year. So do we really truly want to expose, as Rosemary and David Smith had brought up, having people parking in the school parking lot, carrying their guns and going out and doing their hunting from there? It is entirely too close to residential. And I guess one other thing that surprised me when this first came to light was slight restrictions on pedestrian and bike traffic through areas that are adjacent to the preserve in Canotchet Farm. I simply can't understand how, with all of the protected species that exist in this area, we can allow hunting. To me, it just seems an anathema. And I understand that, John Chafee may have had this intention, but we've had a lot stricter enforcement perhaps on the Endangered Species Act. And, I think these two things are in direct conflict. And, what was intended back in 1970s is very different from what is happening in reality in 2020. So I want to put forward my strong opposition to allowing hunting in the preserve. And I truly do hope that the council can bring this back and have a vote on it once the councilors all have an opportunity to become as informed as Jesse Pugh was. And I want to thank Jesse for bringing it forward. Thank you.
All right, who do we have next?
We have Steve from the last one, put his hand back up.
Okay.
See if we can get it to work.
Hello, council members.
Hi, Steve.
Hi,
Name
how's
and
it going?
address.
Good,
How are
thank you.
you?
Good, thanks for the opportunity. I actually wanted to speak on the zoning issue, but I'll just make a quick statement about it now. With this restraining order, does this set some sort of a precedence in the state that any town that, the 39 cities and towns that decides to make an adjustment to their zoning, now cannot be able to do this? It seems a little overbearing, just that, Narragansett has to be penalized in this particular case. So I hope that some kind of resolution can be made and we can govern the town as we need to. That's my biggest question. I don't know if Mark can answer that at all, but.
All right, who do we have next?
I'd like to say something when the public gets through, Matt.
Okay. Who do we have next?
Next, we have Win Hames.
A couple of quick things. First of all, I tried just talking about the hunting. There's another aspect of that I want people to realize. They're also proposing to build a parking lot north of Sprague Bridge, where those rocks are blocking the driveway now. They'll remove those rocks and they're going to build approximately a 440 or 500 square foot parking lot there to accommodate the parking. We all know what happens to parking lots in this town. We tried to block off that area. Now we're going to add another parking lot up there. So that should be brought into that conversation as well as the inherent dangers of hunting in residential areas. The other thing is, to you counselors, I missed a meeting where you discussed my latest petition, and I apologize for that. I did send each of you a letter, including you, Mr. Davis. I hope you all received those letters, and I hope this would return to the council agenda.
All right, thank you. And who do we have next?
We have Dr. Alba.
All right, Dr. Alba, name and address, please, for the record.
Dr. Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. First of all, I'd like to thank Representative Tanzi for weighing in. And I know it was brought up that Senator Chafee had this idea in regards to having this refuge for at that time. But all we have to do is look at the demographics of Narragansett. In 20, 30 years, the inflood of people, the changing of boundaries, the number of houses we have here is just mushroomed. So what was good back then with the much less mass population, and as Representative Tanzi said, we don't, in regards to the regulations and them enforcing it, but we have such an influx of people here. We have tourists coming here. So it really has to be looked at again. And I think that's a very valid point. So hopefully this will be discussed in the future. Another concern I would have is we have a lot of different programs going on here. Tourists, which they love to go on high-speed boat rides. They like to go to Block Island. So we have a lot of wealth, you know, we have a lot of activities which bring tourists into these locations. So my question is, these tourist spots which bring a lot of people in, are they going to be contacting, or is there going to be some way that they're going to be regulated in regards to controlling the crowds? Are they going to be like, for example, the high-speed boats? How like they probably can't have the capacity of the amount of people they had before with the new social distancing laws. Will each of these enterprises have their own? I know they're going to have certain more different kind of restrictions, but are they going to have to bring this to the town council for review? That would be my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have next?
We have somebody using a Dell 820. So
all right, the Dell 820.
Dell
Please
820.
state your name and address for the record.
I think I knocked on that guy's door.
Hello.
Name and address. Name and
Stan
address.
Wojciechowski, Narragansett.
That's definitely one of my constituents. Is that one of the first Dell there, Stanley? That's from 1988, the Dell D820 there.
This thing here has to be at least 10 years old. I know that you guys are all.
Dan, you gotta turn off your speaker. Turn off your speaker.
Oh, is that what's wrong here? Okay,
You're listening to it twice.
How do I get it off? Okay, how's that? Is that too better? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. I just like to, I know you are all discussing the budget. So I just want to, I want to beg you to use the undesignated fund balances or the surpluses so that we have a 0% increase in taxes this year. That's all I gotta say. 0% tax increase. We have too much. We've got too much spending, and we're out of money. We've got a financial disaster going on. I see with my tenants. We're going to do something here. 0% tax increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's my goal too. Thank you. Who do we have next?
We have David and Rosemary Smith again, I believe.
Yes, this is Rosemary Smith, Castle Road. I wanted to remind the town council that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Plan, the period for comments started on March 16th, and it ends June 1st, which is in 2 weeks. And so I'm hoping that someone who is on the committee or someone representing the town will speak to U.S. Fish and Wildlife about the concerns that you have received from members, residents of Narragansett. And from the summary of tonight's meeting, there are concerns and there are different interpretations of what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife are going to do. And June 1st is it. That's it. And then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife will determine what their rules are going to be after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
We have Alex and Sue.
All right, if you could state your name and address for the record, please. Alex and Sue, we can't hear you right now. All right, do you have anyone else?
That's it.
Is that it? Am I on now?
Oh, there we go. There you
Oh,
go.
okay. All right. Sorry about that. You know,
Name-
new at school. The reason I wanted
Name
to.
and address for the record, please.
Susan Amoruso, West Bay Drive. The reason I wanted to speak is that I wanted to address this resolution that was withdrawn. I think it's the reason so many people were attending the meeting tonight. And I think that knowing that your resolution was going to be voted down, I feel you should have withdrawn that rather than taking the floor with all your opinions. And then there was no opportunity allowed for others to comment because you withdrew it. And I understand technically it's right, but I felt it was very one-sided. And I think that just one
So
point.
Sue, encourage council members not to state their positions beforehand. I don't think I've done that. I bet maybe I've done it in my 7 years, but that it makes it a moot point and a waste of people's time. So
Well, I'm trying to express my opinion without being interrupted. I disagree with you. I feel that even though technically you were correct, I feel others should have been given the opportunity. Because we all do know that, yes, these things are important, but there have been instances in the news where people have attended church services or funerals, and then there has been an outbreak and it becomes a hot spot. So I just felt that there was an adequate input, and a lot of people texted me and said, this is it? We don't get to voice our opinion. So that's just one thing. And I also feel that the library should be restored to its full funding. I think the cuts that are continuing are detrimental to the town. It's a cooling, heating location, and I think with social distancing, our library, once again, is very inadequate for the needs of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do you have next?
We have Jennifer Armstrong.
All right, Jennifer Armstrong, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Jennifer Armstrong, 49 Montauk Road. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yep.
I'd like to comment just to piggyback on Sue's comment. I mean, I think a lot of the residents who've entered the Zoom call tonight, which was very difficult to find, by the way, considering you have a Facebook page and it wasn't, you know, if I was an elderly of the community and wasn't up to date with technology, it would have been extremely difficult for me to find. And I feel as though, you know, with the COVID issue and bringing upon something so close to safety and having a possible vote to overrule what provides safety in our community, it should have had easy access. And moving forward, I feel as though it's really a disservice not to hear all of the wonderful things that residents probably have in their creative minds to help the situation. I know that earlier this week, I sent a letter and received no response from any of the town councilmen, which I'm very disheartened about. There were creative ideas in there. I know there are other people on this phone call that the same thing. So I just feel like it's a disservice. You know, one of the things that your website does state in what the town council's mission statement is to uphold respect and integrity. And that includes the police mission statement for providing safety for our residents. And I don't feel like we've been rightfully heard tonight. So moving forward, I would just hope that an issue regarding safety in a pandemic that's not going to end anytime soon would be treated differently moving forward.
Thank you. Do we have someone else?
Do we have James Grand?
All right. James, could you state your name and address for the record?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
My name is James Grande. I'm a resident of 9 Congress Road in Narragansett. I agree with Jennifer. I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that I was a little bit disappointed because I felt that over the course of a couple of days, the entire eyes of the state of Rhode Island were on the town of Narragansett. And we had an opportunity to showcase that we have a lot of brilliant minds here in the town of Narragansett. And we have a lot of input and opinions from the people of Narragansett who either were in support of or against that piece of information that was kind of put out there. And I think that there are people that were really belittling and demeaning the people and the residents of Narragansett based off of that thing that came forth. And they were belittling and demeaning of the police department, disrespectful to the business owners, and they were kind of passing judgment upon the people of Narragansett as a whole. And we had an opportunity to kind of speak up with the eyes of Rhode Island on us and showcase that we're good-hearted people who are just trying to make good decisions and trying to come up with solutions and present new ideas. And that was pretty much stifled when when we didn't really get a chance to speak. So it was extremely disappointing. I felt like I was working incredibly hard to defend police officers who were being judged and demeaned by all these people from all around the state. And we could have really set an example as a community who can bring forth new ideas, perhaps change some of the things that were included on that thing that we were going to discuss, but that didn't happen. So just wanted to make that clear and let myself speak on that.
All right, thank you. Is the moderator, do we have anyone else?
Nope, that was it.
All right, great. So our next, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Matt, I'd like to say something.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Open forum. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to speak on the resolution. I was hoping you'd go around, but it is open forum. Actually, I'm glad you put it out there because this is a conversation that we need to have sooner than later about the opening of the state. Certainly, I believe Gina has done a good job bringing the curve downward, and and I think we're getting there. Very, better than we were a couple weeks ago. So it's happening. Things are opening up. I don't want to, think, that this council is abandoning local businesses because we're not. Okay. The restaurants open today. The 14-day quarantine ends, I think, the 22nd. Beaches, I believe they're going to be open this weekend. State beach is going to be open. I leave it up to the town manager and the parks director. But things are opening up. And the state's own numbers demand that things open up a little faster. When 75% of the deaths are in nursing homes, the opening of the state should be based on the 25% that did not, that represents the general population. So those souls that pass, that demographic should be used to open up the state. And I think they realize that. And, I don't see why they got salons and barbers, hunkered down any more than any other business. They should. I don't think we should be at phase 1. I think we should be at 1.7. I think we should be a little bit more advanced than where we are now. And I think things are going to happen sooner than later. Have a little more patience. It's this town council and the town hall and all the staff are here to work with the local businesses to help you open up. So if you have any questions, there's plenty of us around, me or any other councilman. I'm sure they want the same thing. So instead of going to the extremes, I see people driving around by themselves with a mask on. I don't know who they're trying to protect. And then on the other extreme, you got people who are, against, being locked down, but we are unrolling the opening of the state. And it's gonna happen sooner than later, so just hang in there and we'll get through this. Thank you.
Patrick, if it goes slowly, feel free to put my resolution on in 2 weeks. If
Well,
you're
I'll
upset
tell you
with how
what,
slow it is.
Come summer solstice there, I'll be in the forefront with you. I'll be there with a pitchfork.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're gonna move on to our executive session. We have a motion to retire to executive session of the town council, in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5, subsection A, litigation in accordance with RIGL 42-46-5, subsection A2, Bonanno versus Mannix et al., Washington County, 2019, 137. Love Your Library et al. Versus Mannix et al., Washington County, 2019, 495. GP Peer Realty LLC versus Narragansett et al., Washington County, 2019, 499. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jill Lawler.
Is there a second?
Second, Richard Lima.
All right, so this has to be a roll call vote. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Lima, name and all in favor, aye or nay?
Richard Lima, aye.
Patrick Murray, aye.
Trustee Pugh, aye.
Jill Lawler, aye.
Matt Mannix, aye. Motion approved 5-0. Good night, everyone. Thank you to Dan and Terry for our town clerk and our IT director for helping us through tonight. Appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.